Kyren Williams and James Cook are at the top of our Olympic podium, ready to receive the gold medal for best running back values in 2024 fantasy drafts. We discuss why, plus reveal 4 more running backs that are great draft values on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we went through our favorite quarterback values yesterday, gave them the gold, silver, or bronze medal, depending on how good of a value we think they are in drafts. We're going to do that with running backs today, and then we'll do it with wide receivers tomorrow and tight ends on Thursday. But Vinny, give me your best running back value in drafts this year, the guy that deserves the gold medal for this, this award.
Yeah, I've tried to look at it pretty closely here, and I didn't want to go too high. And I looked at James Cook, and I think he's going a little bit lower than he should at RB15, 45th overall, around the 4th or 5th round. Now, James Cook is the centerpiece of this offense, more so with Joe Brady. We saw it down the stretch. He was big last year. Now, the one question mark we would bring up are the touchdowns with Josh Allen. Are they going to be pilfered away here again? Is James Cook going to get a little bit more of that action? And we say yes, because the backup situation is different. You have Ray Davis is probably your best, and he's a rookie. So James Cook should see an ample amount of touches. They're finally handing him the backfield. He's very good at the passing game, and they're going to have to make up for those vacated targets. And you think him and Dalton Kincaid, and there's maybe intermediate passing is going to be a bigger thing we see from Josh Allen this season. So Cook should get targets. I mean, that's what he came to the league for. He was a very good natural receiver. So we also know that his brother went off for a big year in his career, and I think James has that potential. I think he's an explosive back. He can reel off some long runs. So if he can't get the ball inside the 5, he can score some touchdowns that way. I think he can get involved with nice volume in the pass game. And again, right now, the situation is very clear for him to dominate most of the touches in this backfield. Again, they're figuring out stuff. Now, you could see some short area passing that cuts into it, like Curtis Samuel, but they need James Cook to be a big part of what they do overall. They need him to see close to 20 touches per game. So if you give a player of this caliber 20 touches who can reel off 5 yards per run and have some nice screen plays that go for some distances here with potential, I'll say 8 to 10 touchdowns as a very modest number, I think you're looking really good as an RB1 overall with the volume he's going to get. So I think it's a little surprising that he's this low given basically in the offense last year when it became Joe Brady's, James Cook was doing it all.
Yeah, I expect the Bills to run a lot this year with Joe Brady. Now, the biggest concern with James Cook is the touchdowns, right? Because Josh Allen likes to take all of those around the goal line, but I think that's what's keeping his cost down. I mean, James Cook, we know, has a really high ceiling he's a talented runner. Like you mentioned, he's a good pass catcher. So we know his ceiling's high. Just can he hit that double-digit rushing touchdowns? I don't know if any running back in this Bills offense will be able to do that, but that's why I love his cost because you don't have to take him too high. He's going around guys like Rachaad White and Joe Mixon and Kenneth Walker. Like, I prefer James Cook over all of those guys. I think he has just as high a ceiling as them. Well, actually, I think he has just as high as a floor, I should say, with even a higher ceiling than those guys do. So I'm with you. I really like James Cook value.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about just the talent alone. And the talent is the number one thing we're looking for. Then we look at the usage. The usage is going to be fine in this particular offense. So, yeah, I'm standing behind my pick, and I think you're going to stand very firmly behind yours because we've talked about it quite a bit on this show, and there's been better reports about him in camp. So reveal your gold medalist value pick for running backs in 2024 drafts.
Yeah, I've been talking about him a lot this offseason, and I understand he's still going mid-second round, so it's not like he's falling super far, but it's
Yeah.
Kyren Williams. Like, I don't understand why he's not going earlier in drafts. So, there's 2 running backs last year that averaged more than 18 fantasy points per game in full PPR. That was Christian McCaffrey at 24.5 points per game and Kyren Williams at 21.3. No one else was even over 18, so he scored 3 more fantasy points per game than any other player besides Christian McCaffrey or any other running back. Now, McCaffrey's being selected at the 101 in most drafts, and that makes a ton of sense, right? He should be. But why is then Williams falling to the middle of the second round? He was such a good fantasy player, and I know maybe people are scared off of Blake Corum being drafted there in the 3rd round, but no player saw a heavier workload than Williams in a per game average last year. He led the NFL with 21.7 touches per game and 19 carries per game. The Christian McCaffrey, who touched the ball so many times, averaged 17 carries per game, while Kyren Williams was at 19 carries per game, 2 more than Christian McCaffrey. And like, he got all the goal line work, all the work inside the 10. With missing 5 games, he had the 4th most carries inside the opponent's 10-yard line. Like, he can lose some touches to Blake Corum, and he's still going to be one of the most heavily utilized running backs in the league. We're like so desperate for workhorse backs right now. Like, we don't get them anymore. We have one sitting right in front of us, and we're like, nah, we'll let him fall to the middle of the second round. Like, I'm just not quite understanding why people are scared off of him.
All right, let me counter with just to ask. We have Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, and Bijan Robinson are up there. Now, the next group of 3, if you want to put them in any order here, you can do that. Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and Jahmyr Gibbs. These are some of the players that are going ahead of him. Now, who would you take him over in that second tier, I would say? Maybe you might take him over the first 3, too. I don't know.
No, like, I'm dead. So this is my bigger issue with Kyren Williams, is that he's going 16th overall, while like Breece Hall and Bijan are going 4 and 7, right? Like, there shouldn't be that big of a gap. And also, I think the question between Jonathan Taylor and Kyren Williams is very tight. I also like Jonathan Taylor this year. Again, Kyren Williams should just be up towards him. Definitely, I'm taking Kyren Williams over Saquon Barkley, who's going 13th overall. It's very close between Gibbs and Williams, but I just don't understand the gap here. And I think Kyren Williams is like that tier break completely. Like, if you go through those top running backs that you just named and you end with Kyren Williams as your running back 1 in the middle of the second, I think, like, what's the difference? What's the difference between Breece Hall and Kyren Williams? Honestly, like, why is Breece Hall being so confidently going at RB2, 4th overall? Like, Kyren Williams has shown more than Breece Hall, right? Has been more consistent. Last year finished higher and points per game. Like, I don't understand. Like, I get the appeal for Breece Hall, and I get why people want to draft him. I just don't get the difference between Breece Hall and Kyren Williams to make them that big of a cost difference.
Well, I think one thing that might be in play here is the receptions. I think Kyren Williams is going to get workload on the ground, but we know sometimes that can be a hard path unless you're having the big game, unless you're eating up chunk yards, you're getting the volume, and you're getting 5 yards of carry and pushing towards 100 and getting the ball near the goal line. It's a bit of an old school approach and thinking with that, right? And Sean McVay, however, is an old school thinking type guy. He likes to stick with one back. The only time that we're not sure about the Rams running back is we're not sure which one is healthy enough to carry the load. But when there's a clear guy, such as a Kyren Williams right now, and Blake Corum clearly looks like a very good premium handcuff to have, right? If you have Kyren Williams, you got to get Blake Corum just to kind of sew up the Rams backfield and get that production. If he's going to be the guy, he's going to get a high volume. The question is, again, is he going to see a little uptick in the receptions where you feel that way? Is he going to be explosive enough to carry you some weeks? I mean, he's going to be very steady, and I think he's going to have those big games where he has 130, 140 yards that come just purely on the ground. So I think that's the reason why. I'm not saying it's correct here, but then you start to say there's that conversation, right? Derrick Henry, he's not going to catch a lot of passes. Is he going to stay on the field? He's older. He could break down. I mean, that's an interesting debate that you could bring up as well. And then Gibbs still has David Montgomery to worry about. And Saquon is just Saquon. I mean, he's got a lot of attrition that you worry about as well. So I think it's fair. I think Kyren Williams is a good value. I think he's, like you're saying, being most undervalued in relation to other positions. Like there's a drop off big, and like no one wants to trust him. Like we were dying for these feature backs, as you said. So why aren't we kind of banging the table to get this guy if he's guaranteed that many touches? And when we know there's a clear path to a strong backup in Corum.
Yeah, I just think there's a clear, like, if you can grab a CeeDee Lamb in the middle of the first round and then come around and grab a Kyren Williams in the second round, like you grabbed yourself a top tier, both wide receiver, running back that can finish top 3 at their position. But yeah, I will just keep screaming for Kyren Williams, and I don't want his price to go up, so maybe I should stop doing that. We'll get into our second favorite running back values to hand out our silver medals in our next segment.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. I love sports, and I know you should too. I love them so much I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs are in the rearview mirror here with NBA and NHL, and we're anticipating the college and NFL seasons kicking off, we have fewer games. That's just the reality of it. There's Olympics going on, which is nice to check out if we've got some interest there and some action you can get on. We know MLB is also there. So the sports may not be sportsing like you or I want them to, but FanDuel lets you and I keep the sports going whenever we want. All we have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime we're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is looking up and hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. Again, get in on the MLB action because FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Check out all the good stuff they have for NFL and CFB today. All right, Michelle, let us continue the show. Let's hand out our silver medal. So we had Kyren Williams and James Cook. They are at the top of the podium as our best gold medal values here for fantasy running backs in 2024 drafts. Let's look at your choice, however, for the silver medal. Now, I might disagree on this one. We both might disagree a little bit in this segment, but that's going to be fun. So go ahead, hand out your silver.
Yeah, James Conner is just that boring old veteran that's not shiny, that nobody wants to draft, although all he does is put up fantasy points. But right now he's going as a running back 21. You can get him late in the 6th round. He's averaged 14.7 fantasy points per game in half PPR over his 3 seasons with the Cardinals. That's the 9th most among running backs in that span. But last year he's a running back 10 in points per game. The year before that, he was a running back 10 in points per game. The year before that, he was a running back 6 in points per game. Now he's going as a running back 21. He is this offense's back. Like, they depend on James Conner so much because he's such a good player. And he was on fire at the end of last year. When Kyler Murray was back and looking healthier and got his groove under him, Conner finished the 2023 season scoring 23.9 points per game from weeks 13 through 18, the most among running backs during that span. These were his fantasy finishes over the last 5 games he played. Running back 5, running back 11, running back 4, running back 4, running back 1. Like, he, with Kyler Murray, was scoring touchdowns left and right because the team actually was in scoring position. We know when if you put James Conner at the goal line and give him a carry, he's getting it. Like, he was such a good goal line back with the Steelers, and that's transferred over to the Cardinals. Will get into the end zone, but like, I don't think he's slowing down. He still has it in him. Will he miss games? Absolutely. Every year he misses at least 3 games. It's going to happen, but that's why you can get him in the late 6th round. And I'm fine with that, right? Like, if you're telling me I'm going to get a guy who's a top 10 scorer at the position when he's on the field, cool. I'll miss 3 games, right? And I'm not worried about Trey Benson taking his job at all.
Yeah, I think these are very similar situations. Him and Kyren Williams, both in the NFC West. There is a buzz over the rookie behind him, Trey Benson. Just like we have the buzz with Blake Corum because of where they were drafted, and it kind of surprised people that you had Kyren, you had James Conner, but these teams still invested rather highly in relation to the rest of the teams.
But
running backs.
Vinnie, I want to ask, like, I feel like we just keep thinking all these 3rd round running backs are going to take these veteran jobs who've done a good job. Tell me when 3rd round running backs take veteran jobs. Like, veteran jobs.
3rd round is like the 2nd round for running backs to this point because running backs don't go in the 1st round unless you're really special. The way Robinson Gibbs, I think you just always That's just us in the nature of fantasy. I'm going to say it's a thing that we look at. We're always looking for the shiny new guy on the scene, and we want to be smart. Like, okay, here comes Blake Corum, here comes Trey Benson. These guys do that. Then it's like the old reliable does it, right? We were all in on Jahmyr Gibbs as the only pick, and then David Montgomery still had really good value there for the Lions, right? So just be careful about that. That is a very good point you're making, that there's a little bit of overexcitement about any rookie. It doesn't matter if they're the third
And Gibbs
round
was what,
or
the 12th overall pick of the
yes,
draft, and he
yeah,
still had a fight with David Montgomery.
yeah.
Like,
You're
third
right. I
round
mean, that's a
picks
good
don't
point.
take jobs of good veteran players. They just don't.
Yeah, I think the one thing you're looking at with Williams and Connor, another similarity is there are some durability issues. As you said, you can count on missed games. Williams missed games last year as well, but this is running back. Most guys have a little bit of attrition here. So again, what I like, however, is that Trey Benson is a good number 2 that you can look at as a handcuff. Now, I think Benson is also something we would consider for the future because James Conner is getting to 29. He's got a pretty heavy workload when you go back to Pittsburgh. And what he's done there, he's missed some time with injuries, and he's also a free agent next year. So they might want to give Trey Benson more chances, but it could be more in the back end of the year. So I think as long as you can get Kyren Williams or James Conner where they're going as a value, and make sure you get their handcuffs. It's just too easy right now that these guys are going to be the backups. Then you're set, right? Then you're okay. Then you're not going to sweat it. Enjoy the production when it's there, and then you don't worry so much about the injury. So injury durability stuff is a little bit overrated when you have like clear backups. And again, Benson might be the guy next year. He's not going to be the guy, at least out of the gate, for at least half the season this year, unless there's an injury. So keep that in mind. And the same thing with Kyren Williams there ahead of Corum. Now, my pick is an injury guy as well. So that's probably why I said injuries are not that big of a deal, because it's DeAndre Swift. Now, actually, he was healthy last year. He produced okay. I thought he was going to have a bigger year. Remember that massive game he had? He's a Philadelphia native. He said, okay, he ran all over the Vikings. We said, we're in business. We've got an RB1 the rest of the way. And then it kind of got sloppy with the usage of the Eagles' backs. They didn't know exactly where to go with Kenneth Gainwell and whoever they had left there. So it was very messy. And now DeAndre Swift, however, lands in a little bit better situation. We would say, hey, wait, there's the crowd here in Chicago with Khalil Herbert and Roshan Johnson. Is it really? I mean, those guys we talked about so much. Talk about guys that were young and we talked about so much, then didn't do anything last year, right? Donta Foreman comes in, this old journeyman veteran guy. He has the big game, puts up the numbers. So DeAndre Swift is a veteran. He's in a great spot. He's going to be a big part of what they do offensively. You get Shane Waldron, who's really helped Kenneth Walker be a very solid fantasy producer. DeAndre Swift is going to lead this backfield. He's going to be a key check down guy at times for Caleb Williams. So I love everything about him, and especially at the cost. I mean, you're looking around RB 25, 74 overall. I mean, this is really ridiculous for DeAndre Swift because this guy is such a high ceiling. If you get him a few involvements in the passing game, you get him going, he can score. He's an underrated power back as well. I think he kind of got lost behind Nick Chubb there, like being the power back from Georgia, but DeAndre Swift can do that as well. So I think he's in a really good spot, and you have an offense that should be a lot better to give him more opportunities.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Normally, running backs with rookie quarterbacks, it's not like the highest of ceilings for them. And I will say, he's getting sandwiched by James Conner and Najee Harris, 2 guys I really like. So DeAndre Swift
Yeah.
probably will not be on any of my teams, but I get what you're saying. And he's on an offense that should be high scoring. He finally gets like a backfield to himself where the quarterback shouldn't be taking every single rushing touchdown from him like it happened last year. So I get his upside. I do. I just like the guys around him a little bit more. I'm actually shocked by my last pick. I'm starting to get hotter on him as we get closer to draft season. I did not expect this whatsoever. We will get into our bronze medal, the third best running back values in fantasy drafts, to finish up today's show. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Game Time app. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and the best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. It's the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. And tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. All you have to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, Vinny, I got in the document first and I put my names down. So it's not even like you stole my guy from me, but it's very shocking to see this name under yours instead of me saying him. But you can discuss. I want to hear your side. I'm excited for once that I'm not, talking about him.
Yeah, I went with Zach Moss. It's probably low
Woo!
hanging fruit at this point, based on this discussions and things we've had here in this podcast. But he's around RB29. I don't understand why he's going outside of the RB2s. This is very hard to explain to me. 86 overall in the 8th round. Like, I get it. Again, are we back to overhyping a young player, and Chase Brown might be? I don't know, but Zach Moss is really quite literally stepping into the Joe Mixon role. Mixon left, they cut him. He went and replaced Devin Singletary, replaced Saquon Barkley, and in this cycle of events, we had Zach Moss essentially replace Joe Mixon. Now, if you look at what they do, they're similar backs. They're pretty good around the goal line. They can score. When you need them, they can catch passes and be effective in that role. So the Bengals are pretty much telling you exactly what they feel about their offense, and they've been pretty steady here with Zach Taylor. I know they did lose Brian Callahan, but Jermaine Burton may not be a big factor, but what do? They drafted him because they lost Tyler Boyd. So they're telling you, we're going to try to fit him in that role if we can. If not, we'll have to move around our other receivers and make it put a little more Trent Irwin. But Zach Moss, they didn't really say we're going to bring him in and have him compete with anyone. It's not like Chase Brown is a big dude. Like, he's a little bit of a scat back type and change of pace. So when you look at that, I think there's going to be some opportunities. But what did the Bengals have before? They had Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine. Perine came in a few pass catching situations, even made a play in the Super Bowl. So this is the same type of situation. There's very few variables. Moss was awesome filling in for Jonathan Taylor last year, so we know he can carry a bigger load. So none of these question marks exist here at all for me. With Moss, I think maybe just everyone's looking at it and it's like, okay, is this an offense we totally want to trust? But yeah, his value is just too great right now. It's a little worrisome that it can only go up from here, and then we're not going to get the value that we're getting in Zach Moss.
Yeah, I think my biggest worry right now is that, reports out of camp is that Chase Brown is taking a lot of first team reps. We'll see if that continues, right? That's why I didn't put him here because I just have too much invested. I love Zach Moss too much. So I'm almost trying to back off of it because I don't want to jinx it. But I do want to wait. Still, I mean, it was July 29th or July 28th when these reports came out that it was like, he was getting Chase Brown got some snaps.
Sometimes that happens also because you don't want to overexpose Moss and you know what he has, right? And you know what you have in him, right? If you went out and got him pretty quickly, replaced Mixon, where you still don't know what you have in Chase Brown. He was a little bit banged up quite a bit last year, and you want to see how we can best work him in. So some of these reports, I always hear these reports, these first team reps or whatever, but they also will tell you that they went out and got Moss. So I don't know.
At the very least, he's going to be the goal line back. And we know in a good offense, Joe Mixon has seen the most carries inside the 5 over the last 3 years among running backs.
Exactly.
Like, this is a good offense. Joe Burrow's back. Moss is going to have opportunity to score double-digit touchdowns. So that's like the very least, and you're getting him for so cheap. And if he ends up being that full-time workhorse back like Mixon was, then you stole him. So still a great value. Now, my guy's Tony Pollard, and it's gross, right? Like, I get it. But his price right now is running back 28. And I understand how much he disappointed us all last year. I was in on the Tony Pollard hype. I had him ranked as a top 5 running back as well. We all thought this was going to go great when he took over.
It didn't happen.
But he still finished as the RB14. And that was terrible from where he was drafted, but he still was the RB14. And we're acting like he was just complete garbage. And he's getting thrown away now just because of how much he hurt us. He was the RB8 in 2022. He's one of just 4 running backs that has hit 1,300 plus scrimmage yards in each of the last 2 seasons with Christian McCaffrey, Travis Etienne, and Derrick Henry. And now we're just throwing him out because he disappointed us last year. Like, we got to get over our feelings a little bit. The Titans immediately, like, it took them, I think Tony Pollard was like the first signing we heard of, or first, like,
Yeah.
it's not technically signing, but first offer, I guess, as soon as that tampering period opened. Like, there was news like, oh, the Titans aren't going to rush out and grab a running back. And literally like 0.1 seconds after, it was like, oh, they agreed to terms with Tony Pollard. This is the guy they wanted. They gave him a 3-year contract worth over $21 million. That's not nothing when it comes to a running back. And like, he's going, like, yeah, maybe he has to split some touches with Tajay Spears, but maybe that's good for him, right? Like, he was much more efficient and effective when he got to split a workload with Ezekiel Elliott. I think the biggest thing here comes down to is who is the goal line back? Is it Spears or is it Pollard? And I think whoever wins that role will be a huge, huge value. I'm willing to bet it's on the Pollard side. And if that's the case, like, he's going to smash this running back 28 upside. They're both good pass catchers. I understand that, but like, he's going to get the workload. They're paying money. Spears will come in, but that's okay with me. And like, he only scored 6 touchdowns last year, and he still finished as a running back 14 overall. That would be your biggest worry in this offense, right? Like, how many touchdown opportunities are there? Well, it's not like he was doing that with the Cowboys anyways when they were the best offense in the league. Like, he wasn't really scoring them because Dak Prescott stole them all. So I'm not like, I just don't see him falling to running back 28 at the end of the year. I think he's still a top 20 running back, and I think he's a really good value if you can get him, especially as your RB3 or a flex player, and that's where he's going right now in the 8th round.
Yeah, you had some similarities between your Williams and Connor pick, and I think we have similarities with these two because, again, continue that carousel of things that happened. Derrick Henry left the Titans. He went to the Ravens. You had Chargers backfield steal the Ravens, and then to replace Derrick Henry, they went with Tony Pollard here. And keep in mind, Brian Callahan, I mentioned him. He's the coach, and now you have Nick Foles there as the offense coordinator. He came from the Jacksonville where Travis Etienne dominated touches. So when you look at the philosophy of both those guys, it's a one-back type of offense with a little bit of change of pace. I mean, we didn't see a lot behind Etienne in Jacksonville with Foles, and then you look at Callahan, I mean, they were pretty much Joe Mixon, and he had the value around the goal line and all that, and just had a few occasional situational touches for other guys. So the history of both guys that are going to be involved in the offense says we trust one back a little bit more. And they're going to bring in and use other backs. They should also use Tajay Spears as maybe a dynamic receiving option here that they need to help Will Levis. That they have some veteran receivers in DeAndre Hopkins and Tyler Boyd and Calvin Ridley, but you might need to get Spears involved kind of as his own kind of playmaking cog here in this, maybe the old school, like Darren Sproles role that a lot of teams have had over the years. So if that's the case, then Pollard, again, there's some redundancy because Pollard can also be explosive, and he's also a good pass catcher. And that's going to keep him on the field more because I think he's a better goal line back. I think he's a better red zone back than Spears is at this point. So if that all is true, then Pollard is going to get more touches than we think into that clear RB2 range versus like taking him because we're worried about Spears as an RB3. Again, Spears, Chase Brown, all these guys can only be limited because they're smaller backs. You just can't put them out that much and overexpose them. They're also not going to be as effective in that role. So I think something you look at, there's only a few like Austin Eckler types who can expand from that role and really be great. And these two, I don't think are it.
Yeah, I agree. And like Spears averaged 5.5 yards per touch last year as a rookie. That was 3rd in the NFL, but like, increase those snaps, it's likely to come down. That's what happened to Tony Pollard, right? And that's why I'm okay if he has to split the backfield a little bit more. Like, that's what he's more explosiveness when he can stay fresh. So I think he's the team situation's not awesome, but there's no reason to be dropped this far. I know he hurt us last year, but we got to get over it. And I think he's a really good value this year. That's it for today's episode. Thank you to you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Everydayers Vinnie and I will be back tomorrow talking about the best wide receiver values in the upcoming fantasy drafts. Don't miss it. Bye, y'all.